It was a bright, bustling morning at one of the largest auditoriums in Dallas, filled with anticipation and whispers. People had traveled from all corners, expecting the usual inspiring words from Joel Osteen, the well-known pastor who had turned motivational preaching into a nationwide phenomenon. Cameras were rolling, lights were bright, and a sense of excitement, mixed with tension, hung in the air. No one could have anticipated what was about to happen next. From the back of the room, a tall figure walked confidently toward the stage. Senator John Kennedy, known for his sharp wit, unflinching confidence, and fearless public demeanor, was not supposed to be part of this morning's agenda. Yet there he was, walking through the crowd as if he owned the place. Some attendees whispered, others gasped, and a few even tried to pull out their phones to capture what was unfolding. Joel Osteen, sensing the unexpected intrusion, stopped mid-sentence and fixed Kennedy with a gaze that was a mix of surprise and irritation. Then, in a voice that carried over the crowd, Osteen barked, "Sit down, boy!" The words echoed to the auditorium. For a moment, the entire room froze. It wasn't just a command. It was a challenge, an attempt to assert authority over someone who clearly wasn't intimidated. Everyone in that room knew that Kennedy wasn't someone who backed down easily. His expression didn't falter. His eyes locked on Osteen's, cool, calculating, and ready. What happened next would shock everyone present. Kennedy didn't raise his voice. He didn't step forward aggressively, and he certainly didn't shout back. Instead, he paused for a fraction of a second, letting the tension stretch, making the audience lean in as if time itself had slowed. Then, in a calm, measured tone, he began to respond, not with anger, but with precision. The room, which had moments before been buzzing with whispers and murmurs, went silent. People instinctively held their breath, sensing that a verbal confrontation unlike any other was about to unfold. Kennedy's words weren't just a reply. They were a dismantling of arrogance disguised as authority. Every phrase, every carefully chosen word, landed with surgical precision. The kind of eloquence that turns an audience from mere spectators into witnesses of something extraordinary. Even the camera operators had a hard time keeping up with the shift in energy. Osteen, who moments earlier had commanded the room, now found himself in the uncomfortable position of listening, really listening. And in the space of less than a minute, Kennedy would transform what started as a moment of confrontation into a display of rhetorical mastery that no one in that auditorium would ever forget. But before we dive into the explosive exchange that followed, let's step back for a moment and look at the scene that led to this clash. The tension, the crowd's expectations, and the subtle cues that set the stage for one of the most unforgettable 47 seconds in political and public speaking history. As the words, "Sit down, boy," hung in the air, the audience's reaction was a mix of gasps, murmurs, and sudden silence. It wasn't just a sharp command. It was a test. Joel Osteen, used to commanding large crowds with his booming voice and charismatic presence, expected compliance. But Senator John Kennedy wasn't the type to comply with theatrics. Kennedy remained standing, his posture straight but relaxed, his hands resting lightly at his sides. The calm he exuded contrasted sharply with Osteen's aggressive tone, creating a tension that the entire auditorium felt physically. The camera zoomed in on Kennedy's face, capturing the slight raise of an eyebrow, a small smirk that hinted at the wit about to be unleashed. Then he spoke, not loudly, not angrily, but with that signature Kennedy rhythm, deliberate, precise, and effortlessly commanding attention. "Pastor," he began, his voice carrying clearly over the microphone, "I must admit, I wasn't expecting a personal invitation to sit, but I appreciate your concern for my comfort." The crowd reacted instantly. Some chuckled nervously. Others leaned forward, sensing the beginning of a verbal dance that was about to turn the tables. Kennedy's response wasn't just a rebuttal. It was a display of control. While Osteen tried to assert dominance with volume, Kennedy used intellect, timing, and wit. Osteen, momentarily caught off guard, opened his mouth as if to speak again, but Kennedy continued, never breaking his calm. "I understand that in a room this large, authority is often measured by the volume of your voice, but experience has taught me that respect is earned, not commanded. Perhaps we could try that approach instead." The words hit like a slow, precise ripple. The audience shifted in their seats, the energy in the room transforming from tense anticipation to awe. People who had come expecting a conventional sermon were now witnessing something far more electrifying, a masterclass in rhetoric. Kennedy had taken a moment that could have humiliated him and flipped it into an opportunity to showcase sharp intellect and poise. Osteen's confidence wavered slightly. The microphone caught a subtle pause, a brief hesitation, enough for Kennedy to gently but effectively press his advantage. Kennedy continued, "I do admire your ability to capture attention, Pastor, but sometimes commanding silence is better than demanding compliance. It makes the message more powerful." The subtle jab was not lost on anyone. Kennedy had managed to dismantle the initial aggression without raising his voice, without personal attacks, and without any visible frustration. Each word was precise, carefully structured, and punctuated with the right timing to maximize effect. As the seconds ticked by, the crowd began to realize the magnitude of what they were witnessing. This wasn't just a clash of personalities. It was a demonstration of skill, how intellect, confidence, and timing could turn an unexpected confrontation into a moment of undeniable dominance. The entire auditorium was now hanging on Kennedy's every word, the previous tension replaced by admiration and anticipation. By the end of the 47 seconds, what had begun as an attempt to intimidate Kennedy had completely reversed. Osteen, for all his experience and influence, was left on the defensive, carefully listening, adjusting, trying to recover, but never able to fully regain the upper hand. Kennedy had turned a commanding shout into a showcase of verbal mastery that would be talked about for months to come. By the time Kennedy finished his measured, razor-sharp remarks, the energy in the auditorium had completely shifted. What had started as a tense, uncomfortable confrontation had transformed into a spectacle of poise and intellect. Attendees, who initially murmured and exchanged uneasy glances, now erupted in applause and astonished whispers. Some people were on the edge of their seats, while others instinctively reached for their phones, eager to capture this historic moment. It wasn't just the applause that was telling. It was a collective realization that Kennedy had turned the tables in less than a minute. The crowd could sense the shift in power. Joel Osteen, known for commanding audiences effortlessly, suddenly appeared unsure, caught off guard by Kennedy's cool demeanor and razor-sharp retorts. Cameras panned back and forth between the two, capturing subtle expressions. Osteen's momentary hesitation, Kennedy's confident composure, and the audience's captivated attention. Social media would later explode with clips of the confrontation. In real time, viewers watching a live stream could barely believe what they were seeing. Comments flooded in, "Kennedy just demolished him in under a minute," and "never seen Osteen speechless like that before." The internet has a way of amplifying moments like these. And within hours, this 47-second encounter became a viral sensation. Inside the auditorium, whispers turned into conversations. People speculated about Kennedy's strategy, how he had managed to stay calm, respond with precision, and avoid escalating tension while completely neutralizing command that had initially sought to dominate him. Teachers, students, and professionals in attendance began to analyze the exchange, noting how effective communication, timing, and confidence could outshine raw authority. For Osteen, the crowd's reaction was a reminder of how quickly dynamics can shift when someone meets aggression with intellect instead of confrontation. Though he maintained his composure publicly, observers could see the subtle acknowledgement in his eyes. Kennedy had earned his respect, and the audience had witnessed something remarkable. Interestingly, this wasn't just about one man asserting dominance over another. It highlighted a broader lesson that resonated with viewers far beyond the auditorium walls. The power of words, when carefully chosen, can outweigh volume and force. Calm confidence and clarity often have a more profound impact than loud commands or bluster. This lesson didn't go unnoticed. Analysts, commentators, and social media influencers began breaking down the encounter, dissecting Kennedy's timing, choice of words, and delivery. Within a single day, articles, opinion pieces, and viral posts had turned the 47 seconds into a case study in modern rhetorical skill. Even those who were fans of Osteen had to admit, Kennedy's approach was masterful. The audience, initially expecting tension or embarrassment, instead witnessed a seamless demonstration of wit, strategy, and composure. It was a kind of moment that would be remembered not for confrontation, but for how intelligence and poise can overcome even the most unexpected challenges. As the applause slowly subsided, Kennedy stepped back slightly, offering a small nod of acknowledgement to the crowd. The auditorium buzzed with excitement and admiration. People were no longer simply spectators. They were witnesses to a display of skill that transcended the immediate clash and left an enduring impression. This encounter, brief as it was, became more than just a confrontation. It became a lesson in the art of communication, a reminder that sometimes the most effective response is not anger or retaliation, but precision, patience, and unwavering confidence. As the crowd slowly settled into murmurs and applause, the cameras cut to behind-the-scenes shots, moments that most viewers wouldn't see live. In those seconds, the dynamic between Kennedy and Osteen became even more intriguing. While the audience had witnessed a verbal masterclass, backstage, the tension and respect were palpable. Kennedy, standing slightly to the side, exhaled just enough to release the subtle adrenaline of the confrontation. His face remained calm, but his eyes revealed focus and satisfaction. He knew the impact of those 47 seconds. It wasn't about humiliating anyone. It was about demonstrating how intelligence, timing, and composure could redirect the energy of a challenging moment. Kennedy's team, stationed quietly nearby, exchanged impressed glances. They knew this would dominate news cycles and social media for days. Meanwhile, Osteen had retreated to a private corner of the stage. Though he maintained a smile for the cameras, his aides noticed a flicker of realization in his eyes. Osteen, accustomed to controlling every room he enters, suddenly found himself on the receiving end of calm, calculated rhetoric. He had faced many critics over the years, but Kennedy's approach was unique. Instead of confrontation, he had met aggression with wit and logic, and it worked brilliantly. Sources close to the event revealed that in those behind-the-scenes moments, both men shared a mutual understanding. Osteen reportedly shook his head with a small, wry smile, a silent acknowledgement that Kennedy had done something remarkable. Kennedy, in turn, remained gracious. He didn't gloat, he didn't mock. He simply respected the gravity of the situation. It was the kind of exchange that history often remembers not for drama, but for mastery. Staff members and attendees who had witnessed the interaction up close described an almost electric energy backstage. Conversations buzzed around phrases like, "Did you see that timing?" and "He didn't raise his voice once." People debated Kennedy's word choice and delivery, analyzing every nuance that allowed him to turn the confrontation into a moment of control. Interestingly, this backstage tension reflected a broader reality about public confrontations. Often, the audience sees only the surface, the words, the gestures, the applause. What they don't see is the preparation, instinct, and calm thinking behind the scenes. Kennedy's ability to respond without emotion, to choose each phrase with precision, was a result of years of experience in high-pressure environments. Osteen's temporary surprise wasn't failure. It was simply a reminder that sometimes, even the most seasoned leaders encounter moments that test them in unexpected ways. Within minutes, Kennedy's team began sharing footage and analyzing key takeaways, recognizing the viral potential. Meanwhile, Osteen's staff discussed strategies for maintaining composure in future interactions. The shared lesson was clear. Charisma and authority are powerful, but intelligence and timing can redefine the rules entirely. This behind-the-scenes glimpse gives us insight into what made Kennedy's response so effective. It wasn't just the words themselves. It was the mental preparation, the calm confidence, and the ability to remain unshaken under pressure. And for Osteen, it was a rare moment of humility, a reminder that even in a room full of admirers, dynamics can shift in the blink of an eye. As the crowd continued to buzz in the auditorium, Kennedy took a few moments to reflect, nodding to his team. Behind the scenes, the respect between the two men, though unspoken, was unmistakable. Both had played their roles, and both had learned something from this extraordinary 47-second exchange. Within hours of the encounter, the story had already taken on a life of its own. Social media platforms were flooded with clips of the 47-second showdown between Kennedy and Joel Osteen. Twitter threads analyzed every word, every pause, and every expression, while TikTok users created short compilations highlighting Kennedy's calm but devastating responses. The hashtag Kennedy versus Osteen began trending worldwide, and mainstream media outlets quickly picked up the story. News channels replayed the footage repeatedly, dissecting the interaction in detail. Political analysts and commentators debated who won the exchange, but most agreed that Kennedy had turned a moment of confrontation into a display of sharp intellect and strategic poise. Editorial headlines read things like, "Senator Kennedy turns the tables on Joel Osteen in 47 seconds," and "How calm confidence beat commanding words." Every article reinforced the same idea. Kennedy's response was not just witty, it was masterful. Online discussions quickly went beyond the simple clash of personalities. Experts in communication, public speaking, and leadership began using the incident as a case study. Podcasts and video channels dissected Kennedy's timing, his choice of words, and his ability to remain unflustered under pressure. Communication coaches praised his technique, explaining that what seemed like a brief, spontaneous exchange was actually a textbook example of strategic rhetorical skill. Memes, GIFs, and reaction videos began circulating almost immediately. Clips showing precise moment Kennedy delivered his lines became some of the most watched segments on YouTube and TikTok. The audience was captivated not just because of the confrontation itself, but because it was a rare demonstration of someone diffusing aggression with intellect instead of anger. Many viewers expressed admiration, commenting things like, "This is how you respond to arrogance with class," and "Kennedy just taught a masterclass in 47 seconds. Even beyond the political and social media worlds, mainstream journalists weighed in. Opinion pieces explored the broader implications, noting how Kennedy's approach exemplified the power of measured responses in high-pressure situations. The narrative wasn't just about who won the clash. It became a lesson in how leadership confidence and calm strategy can influence public perception. Interestingly, Joel Osteen's response, or rather his composed silence, also made headlines. Analysts noted that even though he did not immediately regain control of the conversation, his ability to maintain composure under scrutiny added a layer of respect to the encounter. It reinforced the idea that this moment was less about humiliation and more about demonstrating the art of public interaction. As the clips went viral, ordinary viewers became part of the conversation. People in offices, classrooms, and homes discussed the showdown, replaying it for friends and family. Teachers showed the clip in communication classes. Political science professors used it as an example of modern rhetoric. The story transcended entertainment. It became educational, viral, and unforgettable. By the end of the day, what had been a brief 47-second interaction between two public figures had become a global talking point. Kennedy's calm, calculated approach left an impression that went far beyond the walls of the auditorium. In a world that often celebrates volume over substance, his measured response reminded everyone watching that intelligence, timing, and poise could outweigh even most commanding presence. News channels replayed the footage repeatedly, dissecting the interaction in detail. Political analysts and commentators debated who won the exchange, but most agreed that Kennedy had turned a moment of confrontation into a display of sharp intellect and strategic poise. Editorial headlines read things like, "Senator Kennedy turns the tables on Joel Osteen in 47 seconds," and "How calm confidence beat commanding words." Every article reinforced the same idea. Kennedy's response was not just witty, it was masterful. Online discussions quickly went beyond the simple clash of personalities. Experts in communication, public speaking, and leadership began using the incident as a case study. Podcasts and video channels dissected Kennedy's timing, his choice of words, and his ability to remain unflustered under pressure. Communication coaches praised his technique, explaining that what seemed like a brief, spontaneous exchange was actually a textbook example of strategic rhetorical skill. Memes, GIFs, and reaction videos began circulating almost immediately. Clips showing the precise moment Kennedy delivered his lines became some of the most watched segments on YouTube and TikTok. The audience was captivated not just because of the confrontation itself, but because it was a rare demonstration of someone diffusing aggression with intellect instead of anger. Many viewers expressed admiration, commenting things like, "This is how you respond to arrogance with class," and "Kennedy just taught a masterclass in 47 seconds. Even beyond the political and social media worlds, mainstream journalists weighed in. Opinion pieces explored the broader implications, noting how Kennedy's approach exemplified the power of measured responses in high-pressure situations. The narrative wasn't just about who won the clash. It became a lesson in how leadership, confidence, and calm strategy can influence public perception. Interestingly, Joel Osteen's response, or rather, his composed silence, also made headlines. Analysts noted that even though he did not immediately regain control of the conversation, his ability to maintain composure under scrutiny added a layer of respect to the encounter. It reinforced the idea that this moment was less about humiliation and more about demonstrating the art of public interaction. As the clips went viral, ordinary viewers became part of the conversation. People in offices, classrooms, and homes discussed the showdown, replaying for friends and family. Teachers showed the clip in communication classes. Political science professors used it as an example of modern rhetoric. The story transcended entertainment. It became educational, viral, and unforgettable. By the end of the day, what had been a brief 47-second interaction between two public figures had become a global talking point. Kennedy's calm, calculated approach left an impression that went far beyond the walls of the auditorium. In a world that often celebrates volume over substance, his measured response reminded everyone watching that intelligence, timing, and poise could outweigh even the most commanding present as the dust settled from the dramatic 47-second exchange. It became clear that this moment was far more than a fleeting spectacle. It was a demonstration of how confidence, wit, and precision could redefine public perception in an instant. For those present in the auditorium and for millions watching online, Kennedy had turned a challenge into a lesson, leaving an indelible mark on anyone who witnessed it. In the days following, news outlets and social media continued to highlight the incident. Analysts dissected every second. Educators used it as a teaching example, and public speaking forums shared it as a case study in strategy and composure. Kennedy's approach became a blueprint for handling confrontations gracefully, proving that intellect and calm often outperform aggression. The lasting impact was also personal. Joel Osteen, while initially surprised, reportedly reflected on the encounter with a mixture of respect and humility. Even those accustomed to the spotlight must acknowledge when someone handles a situation with finesse. This subtle acknowledgement reinforced the idea that public confrontations do not need to escalate to be memorable. They can instead be moments of shared learning and reflection. For viewers around the world, the incident sparked broader conversations about how we deal with challenges in everyday life. Whether in professional meetings, classroom debates, or social interactions, Kennedy's measured response demonstrated that one could assert authority, protect one's dignity, and maintain composure without resorting to anger or retaliation. It was a reminder that how we respond often matters more than what is said to us. The viral nature of the clip also had a cultural impact. Memes, reaction videos, and commentary clips kept the conversation alive, ensuring that this encounter remained in public consciousness for weeks. The story transcended politics, religion, or personal differences. It became about strategy, communication, and emotional intelligence. People from diverse backgrounds found inspiration in those 47 seconds, sharing the clip with captions like, "Watch how calm wins every time, a lesson in handling challenges like a pro." Kennedy's moment of composure also served as a subtle lesson in humility and respect. While he dismantled a command meant to assert dominance, he did so without mockery or insult. The message was clear. Confidence does not require belittling others, and influence is best demonstrated through intelligence, clarity, and control. This nuance was what made the encounter memorable, not just for the audience in the room, but for anyone who saw it online. Finally, the encounter cemented a timeless lesson. Power and influence are most effective when paired with poise and strategy. In just 47 seconds, Kennedy demonstrated a principle that resonates far beyond the walls of any auditorium or the pixels of a social media feed. It was a moment that reminded everyone watching that preparation, calm, and wit can turn even the most intimidating situations into opportunities for leadership and respect. As the cameras faded and the audience filed out of the auditorium, one thing was certain. This was more than a confrontation. It was an unforgettable lesson in composure, strategy, and communication, a moment destined to be referenced, studied, and admired for years to come. And for anyone watching today, it serves as a reminder, when faced with challenge, it's not the loudest voice that wins. It's the one who remains calm, precise, and unshakable no matter pressure.